Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where every meeting's a huddle and every coffee run is a blitz. I'm your host, Jeff Maines, help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about creating a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Well, we've got a big weekend coming up. Do you got plans? Yeah, a lot of you already know, whether you're inside or outside of the U.S., but one of the biggest sports weekends of the year is coming up. It's the American Football Championship that is the Super Bowl. It's the equivalent of the World Cup to us inside the country. And football is certainly part of the excitement, and commercials always get a lot of hype. I mean, where it is this year, $7 million for a 30-second spot. Insanity. Yeah, some of them have been released early trying to maximize the impact, and others will be kept a surprise until the game. And it's always interesting to see what happens and who does what. But my favorite part of the game actually isn't the game itself. Longtime football fan, but there's something even more, and that is food and friends. You know, cooking out together, we barbecue and do things together, and it's just having fun and the camaraderie of it all. I mean, what is better than that? And like I said, football is my favorite sport by far. But I really enjoy the human aspect even more than the game itself. For the players in the Super Bowl, this is the pinnacle of achievement in football. It's what everybody gets into the NFL that they want to do. This is the ultimate goal. And it serves as a powerful metaphor, I think, for the pursuit of excellence in business. The parallels between clinching the Lombardi Trophy and smashing revenue targets are striking, with both arenas demanding meticulous planning, flawless execution, and unparalleled teamwork. I think there's some leadership lessons in that for us, particularly when we think about winning new revenue. The first one is to strategize like a champion. And just as a championship-winning coach dissects past games and anticipates the opponent's every move, sales leaders, business leaders, marketing leaders must craft their strategies with precision, not wild guesses or best guesses, but real, true precision. Understanding the competitive landscape, recognizing customer pain points, and then tailoring your value proposition. It's like drawing up a game-winning play on the chalkboard. You know, it's about being so well prepared that when the moment of opportunity arrives, your team executes with confidence and finesse. Strategy meets execution. Either one of those alone just falls short. The second is agility on the sales field. If sports teaches us anything, it's that conditions can change in the blink of an eye. You know, a star player's injury or an unexpected play, trick play, can upend the best laid plans. And we've seen a lot of that this season. It's been pretty fun. But momentum can shift in a split second. And similarly, in sales and market dynamics, customer needs, competitive actions are fluid. Agility, being able to pivot swiftly and smartly in response to new information. Not just pivot, but actually make a smart move, a good move to counter whatever the change is. And I think that's a skill that is crucial as a sales team, just like it is for an offense driving for the end zone. You know, it's about reading the field, reading the defense. It's adapting on the fly, calling an audible, seizing opportunities with speed and precision. And the third one is the power of teamwork. No Super Bowl has ever been won by a single player's effort. And I think it's a little bit ironic that, you know, there's an MVP, the most valuable player, because everybody is valuable in there. And I suppose, I mean, there are some people that do make spectacular plays, and so maybe they are MVPs, but without every player doing their position, then, you know, bad things happen on both sides of the ball. You know, it is a team victory achieved through unity, communication, and mutual support of each other. Everybody doing their role, playing their part. And in business, I think the same principle applies. It's the seamless collaboration between marketing, sales, customer service, product development that creates a winning formula. It takes all of those together, sharing insights, aligning goals, and rallying around a common vision. And that's what empowers teams to push beyond individual limits and achieve collective greatness. So we draw inspiration from football. Let the meticulous planning of a head coach inform our strategic marketing approach. The agility of a quarterback under pressure inspire our adaptability. And the cohesive strength of a championship defense drive our coordination and collaboration. Just like in football, preparation, agility, and collaboration are the keys to taking home the trophy. So here's to approaching our sales goals with the heart of a champion, ready to claim our place in the SaaS Hall of Fame. Do you know what's even bigger than the Super Bowl? At least for SaaS leaders. It's SaaS Open. Come hang out with me and 1,000 other SaaS leaders in Austin, March 28th and 29th. Get an inside look at the future of software and spend time with the people that are making it happen. There'll be 5 stages with valuable content delivered in short 20-minute segments. Everyone is focused on a different role: SaaS founder, CMO, heads of product, sales, engineering. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So come do that with us March 28th and 29th. Always speaking at a couple of sessions on slaying the 5 SaaS monsters. And, I'd love to meet you. And we'll be hosting a dinner as well called We Love Bootstrappers while we're there. So check that out. Learn more at saasopen.com and use code CHAMPION2024 when you register. Save a couple $100 on your ticket. Hope to see you there, SaaS Open. Our founder on Tuesday was James Roth, Chief Revenue Officer at ZoomInfo. We talked about how sales has changed, what is working today, and personal growth required to successfully transition from individual contributor to executive leadership. And our expert guest last week was Andrew Bartlow, founder of Series B Consulting. We talked about how scale-up tech leaders can be more strategic and more successful. Also got his take on building a contagious culture and the current HR landscape out here in SaaSlandia. My guest today is Brady Jensen, founder of Aggregate Insights. Brady has a knack for harmonizing the historically discordant worlds of sales and marketing. He was once celebrated as the Inside Sales Rep of the Year and rose to the ranks of entrepreneurship. He is dedicated to aligning sales strategies with marketing realities, ensuring companies operate on a validated research model, not just best assumptions or wild guesses. Welcome a man on a mission to foster collaboration and drive success in ways that fundamentally transform business. Welcome, Brady Jensen. Hey, Brady, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey there. Thank you for having me.
Tell me about your journey and how you started Aggregate Insights.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I started early in my career as a salesperson, was quite successful at it, but also had a really strong interest in marketing and product marketing in particular because of the intersection of go-to-market between those two groups. So as I made a transition a good 5 years into my career from being a successful sales rep to being a product marketer, I found some things that made me really quite concerned. I remember as a sales rep, come January every year, you'd have a sales kickoff and marketing would come and they would tell you a new way to pitch this year. And they'd even certify you on it. And all the sales reps would kind of roll their eyes and not trust the process. And the truth is, marketing didn't really bring the receipts. So we had to sit there and wonder as sales reps, well, are they on the right track? I guess they've done their homework. They're the marketers. Like, let's maybe give this a try. But at the end of the day, the answer was always, here's the pitch. Let's certify you. And then just let us know how it goes in the field. Let us know how it lands with the prospect, right? Which scared the heck out of me once I got in the marketing side and I realized that primary research was not being done nearly to the extent that it needed to be within SaaS companies. A lot of assumptions happen, a lot of internal so-called knowledge about the buyer substituted for any real rigorous research to understand exactly what the buyer cared about, how they wanted to buy, how they wanted to be pitched to, what words they want you to use. And I saw over and over this big risk being taken by organizations because they didn't do this homework up front that frankly is a very cheap investment in insurance compared to going out and saying, well, we've got 50, 100, however many reps that they have in the field, and saying, let us know how it goes. We'll make adjustments along the way. Heaven knows, like, it takes 4-6 months to develop this stuff. And then if you're wrong, which oftentimes you are, especially in fast moving markets, then you're going to go back to the drawing board for, Q2, and then Q3, you might try it again, but it's still based on a bunch of internal assumptions. It's just different ones. Next thing you know, you're in Q4 of that year and your prospect's telling you, well, let's connect after the holidays, and you've blown through an entire year. And I've seen this happen with companies that are pre-IPO. I've seen it with companies that are post-IPO. It's a endemic problem within the software, SaaS, enterprise software market that just doesn't have to exist if we do it right and we go and we de-risk this stuff up front.
You're exactly right. And not only is there organizational risk, I mean, as a sales rep, I mean, your income is completely dependent on marketing getting it right. So I think this happens a lot, especially the bigger companies get, the more that, headbutting is happening between sales and marketing, and significant distrust. Sales is pointing the finger at marketing. Marketing's pointing the finger at sales. These guys can't sell anything. They're not even using the pitch that we gave them. That's why things aren't going well.
Right.
And so how do we get to the point where we build that trust and bridge that relationship where it's not contentious, where it is something that is working together?
Yeah. Well, and in my view, the only way to do that is through this intermediary that you both care so much about, who is the buyer, right? At the end of the day, the buyer is who you both really care about. Marketing has a bad habit of not talking enough to the buyer. So that's where marketing can come in and make a whole lot of difference. Sales has some responsibility here, but I will tell you the number of times that we've gone in front of sales organizations, and instead of the usual song and dance about the new pitch, we start by saying, we've talked to 20 buyers you want to sell to this year. Let me show you who they are. Let me show you what their names are. They'll recognize the organizations and say, I've been trying to get into that organization, right? And all of a sudden, they sit up, no matter how hungover they are from the night before, and they say, I actually care about this. You're not telling me your opinion. You're telling me factual data that's longitudinal across all these different buyers so that I can actually apply this stuff in a real way. And in my view, this is where you take sales enablement from a nice to have function where you're sort of a helpmeet to a sales organization to sales enablement that is truly enabling them to do their job, because sales can clearly understand. And to your point, you got these sales reps, they got to close their quota. They want to know, what do I say? What do I do? How do I get these deals done? Everything other than that is kind of window dressing. And so the research should all be based on that information, is so that a sales rep can very clearly have a roadmap to pursue. Otherwise, they are going to go and they're going to pursue their own pathways. They're going to try things that have worked before at other companies they've been at, or even within the company they're at. I just yesterday presented in a webinar, and we did a live poll, and I asked people how confident they were that their sales organization stayed on message, and 88% said they are completely unconfident, and 12% I think are liars. So at the end of the day, I think everyone knows this. Maybe 11%. We'll give, maybe there's the one there that are doing it perfectly, but I have yet to see a sales organization that feels confident about this. And part of it is that leadership doesn't feel confident about this. We have a
Sure.
new customer we just brought on board. They're doing $400 million run rate as a company. And same guy who's risen up the ranks and is now CRO said, all of a sudden, I don't know what to tell my people what to do. I don't know. I don't think marketing has touched the market enough. All of a sudden, we go from being this like one vendor in the market to competing with a bunch of different vendors, and everything just got complicated. And I don't know what the right thing is to tell my own sales team to do. And in that environment, you're going to have these divergent messages, and it kills a sales leader's opportunity to even know whether or not something's working, right? If you got 100 people telling 100 different stories, then you have no story, and you have no way to even go to market and say this isn't working, when really it's probably not working. That's why everyone's sort of sniffed out the limitations in what the marketing team did to that point. And that's why they look at it and say, well, that's your opinion, and that's great. And my opinion's this, and I've been to President's Club 3 times in the last 5 years, and I know what I'm doing. And off they go to tell a story that they've sold before that, also hasn't been validated with buyers, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what makes it so hard. If everybody's doing something different, we think that we're measuring, but we're not at all. We're sort of guessing at the measurement, but we really don't know what works, and we can't find that pattern and really hone in on those.
Right.
How is that we solve the messaging problem? How do we get them to believe and then stay on script? And it doesn't have to, I'm not talking like literal script, but we've got talking points that need to be hit. There's language that our buyers are using that we want to use and mirror that back. How do we get them to actually do that so we do have something we can meaningfully measure and adjust along the way?
I think that it's imperative that the buyer becomes the data point, right? Not a data point, not we talked to some of our best customers who, by the way, bought 5 years ago and are early adopters and look nothing like who you're trying to sell to next year. It's who is your ICP? Who are these buyers? What are their titles? What do they care about? And all of a sudden, that being the data point that everyone focuses on, like, you build this bridge of trust that doesn't exist in any other way, and for good reason, right? Like, I had a recent CRO come to me and say, look, I'm 12 months into my tenure. We haven't figured this go-to-market out. It's like, I have 6 months left and I'm out the door. And they know it, right? In a VC-backed startup sort of environment, you got a year and a half, and then marketing and sales are going to make their best case for why the other one should be fired, right? Which is an extremely tense situation to be in. It's interesting the number of times that my organization enters through sales because they actually have the biggest pain, which is uncertainty. And they're the first ones looked at when things aren't going well, when you're not hitting targets, and all those sorts of things. And then they say, marketing, I need you to get on board with this. We're done being the test pilot for this stuff. They're the guinea pig or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
There's a cost to doing. There's a cost of all that human capital going out and trying stuff out like you're a brand new startup, which is fine. Early days, do that stuff. Do stuff that doesn't scale. But when you've got people in the field and they're selling stuff, you think about just the fully loaded cost of these people, plus all the commissions you'd love to pay them if they could sell something. But that's the opportunity cost, is that they're not selling, they're not making commission, you're losing good salespeople. And companies can sort of implode upon themselves just because there's no momentum. Everyone sours on even the opportunity in front of them, start thinking, well, maybe this market's not as good as we think it is. Well, chances are it's not your market, especially if you've gotten to a certain point, right? Like, early days, you may find that there's not a market opportunity here, but a company's doing 10 million, 50 million, $100 million run rate, there's something there. You're just not actually uncovering what's next for that market. I always talk to early stage founders who we don't tend to work a whole lot with them directly, but I do advise them quite a bit and share with them exactly how we do what we do and tell them, as a founder, your job is to do the first iteration of this stuff. And if you do it well, you're going to be way more likely to succeed as an organization if you do validate all of the assumptions you have prior to trying to get big VC checks. And eventually, though, they become people managers and they come back to us and we help support them because they can't do it forever. And they need somebody to take the mantle and run with it and keep them current on it. And you become their best friend because they look to whoever this person is who is constantly probing the market. The number of times as an internal person when I was an employee, and even today as a trusted advisor to our clients, that they say you're the only one who knows this, right? Like the organization is running off of the information that's coming in through this, and the best executives are taking this stuff and just cranking up their win rates and doing crazy things that seem like they're sort of impossible because all of a sudden they have the clarity that just didn't exist before.
You mentioned something just about the ICP, and in the early days it may look one way, and then you're maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, and who you're selling to now is different than who it was maybe when you're looking for product market fit. Now you've really you think you've got that, but it's different. How is it that you really make those distinctions and focus in and make sure you have current data for the ICP that you're working on now? I think a lot of people miss that does change over time.
Right. I think that there's two sort of ways to look at it that are important. ICP as an organization, and then ICP sort of double clicked into the title, right? So as an organization, the segmentation is super important, and thinking about there's a lot of really valuable information in thinking about things in terms of sort of the bowling analogy, right? Like you choose a pin to hit, but you know what pins you need to hit next so that they reverberate. So that you get people who your next buyer will actually trust as a reference for you. So that becomes super important. But there are plenty of times where you find that the organizations look different, the size of organization looks different, and going out and actually having that information, knowing when the right time is to go up market or to go down market is super important, and only achievable by actually talking to these people. And frankly, not in a buying situation, but in a situation where they're a thought partner with you and they want to talk shop and they want to tell you what they're thinking about, what the rest of their peers are talking about, so that you can start to plot your own path. Now, on the title front, it's often a question of, early days, you're trying to pick off one person who probably doesn't have a whole lot of budget, but they're really interested and they're an early adopter and they're super excited about new technology. And now you have to look at it and say, well, we're now in a complex sale and we have to get procurement on board, and we've got to get the CFO because of economic climate, and we've got to get their 3 other lines of business all lined up. So understanding how these deals get done in reality, and not just like what does a company tell you their buying process is, but like how does it actually work in reality? What are the politics? You weave through a deal, because these people will share this information and they've done it a number of times. They know how to go about doing it. I think it's always helpful to uncover a buyer's ideal way of buying because you want to appeal to that. But it's probably even more important to uncover the way they have to buy, which is it's always somewhere in between their ideal and what the company says the process is to buy. It's never one or the other, right? When you get a deal done, there's a whole lot of internal horse trading and stuff like that you don't get to see in any other way. And the number of we do a lot of win-loss work as well. And when we talk to buyers, there's a huge gap between how even the seller thinks they got a deal done and how a deal actually got done. Or they think a deal could have gotten done, but they didn't get selected. Where if they did know the process ahead of time, they could have done a much better job of preparing themselves to win the deal. So there's a lot of things around ICP when it comes to identifying where you need to be hunting, who your entry point is, who the other players are, who's going to block you, who's going to be your friend, how do you enable the champion within an organization. All this stuff, it's super complicated when you sort of envision all of these different pieces moving. But if you do a good job up front, you can condense this down into a very clear playbook of how to actually go about prosecuting your own deals in a way that will give you the best chance of winning on average across any organization.
I like that. You mentioned something that I think is really interesting, and that is talking to them not in a buying scenario, but as a thought partner.
Right.
Can you expound on that a little bit? And are you getting different answers in the buying cycle than you would if you're having a conversation outside of those kinds of pressures?
Absolutely. I think that there's an inherent dynamic to a buying and selling situation, right? Where no one wants to completely put their cards on the table. No one wants to completely show their hand and say, this is how I want this to, and this is how much I would pay for it, and this is how much you're going to get from me, and all that stuff, right? It's a give and take sort of relationship, even if it's highly consequential and not just a transactional sale, and maybe even more so if it's not transactional. It is this dance of information asymmetry between the two, between the seller and the buyer, where neither of them want full transparency in that process. And then even after the fact, if a sales rep or even someone internally goes and says, "Why didn't you choose us?" Well, now they have a relationship. They've worked with these guys for 6 months. They don't want to tell them their baby's ugly, so they sort of sugarcoat it, nice things, and give easy answers that allow people to sort of lick their wounds and move on with their day. Where in reality, the onion peeled back 3 or 4 layers reveals a whole lot more rich and actionable information that you can do something with. A lot of times, if you go and get this information at a surface level, great, now what, right? Like we can't make product decisions on this. We can't make broad go-to-market decisions based on this because you lost because of price. You didn't have one feature. No, that's not why you did or didn't win a deal.
Right.
But it's also impossible to use that information to actually optimize the way that you go about selling or going to market. Where if you do get the in-depth information, number one, it's 95% different than what you hear if it isn't a buying cycle. And number two, it's actually something you can use.
So how do we get that type of intel? How do we get down below the surface and go deeper in those questions and really have a real conversation with buyers, whether they are, post, if it's deals that we lost, or if it's just having those market conversations? Mm-hmm. What is it that we can do to get down multiple levels? You said 3 levels deep. How do we get there?
From my perspective, it's all about sort of building a conversation that looks like an hourglass. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Conversations rarely, or should I say, substantive conversations rarely start out as substantive conversations, right? The same way as a great interviewer in journalism isn't going to go for the meat immediately, or like ask the controversial question as question one. You have to build some rapport. You have to ask some questions that are innocuous, that feel very safe to answer. But as you get further, I always think about it, like I said, an hourglass, where you ask the generalities. And as you get further into the conversation, you get tighter and tighter in your answers. And people have, at this point, started to feel comfortable sharing this information with you. And then at the end of the conversation, you broaden it back out. Everybody leaves the conversation. And as I think many people know, but maybe don't recognize in this context, people remember the first of conversations and the last of conversations, and the first of books and the last and the end of books, right? Like,
Right.
it's the thing that they go in not even realizing just how deep into your psyche, into their psyche, you have dug because you had very pleasant conversation at the front, at the end, and in the middle you got real serious with them, and they started to share the stuff that maybe isn't as pleasant to share. That's how I train my people to do it. It's a huge part of it is getting the right people at the right time to have these conversations. But once you have them, if you run those conversations in an improper way, it can be worse than not doing them at all, frankly, right? Because you can get a whole lot of signals that say, we're awesome, everything's great, people love us. It's like when a customer says, oh yeah, you guys are great, we're totally happy, and then they churn, right? And you're like, how?
Yeah.
Right? Well, if you had
What happened?
you find out that maybe there's more to the story than just we're fine. It's sort of like the customer in my mind, that if a customer's complaining, that means they're engaged. You got a shot at winning additional business or continuing your relationship. If they're fine and don't ever want to talk to you, it's a huge risk, right? And the same with with these market conversations. If you only get to this is what Gartner told us, this is what Forrester told us, we think that we think that we buy based on cost and ROI or whatever. Yeah, that's true, but that's not really what's making or breaking deals. So unless you get down to stuff that's more meaty, you're either going to be able to make no decisions based on the information that you've been given that actually affect your strategy, or you're going to make decisions based on this rose-colored glasses environment that you think you're working in, because you really didn't get into the more uncomfortable or controversial topics.
Yeah. So how do you navigate different priorities and metrics of sales and marketing? Because they're measured differently, the things that they're looking for differently, and how do we align those toward common goals?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the system of MQLs and sales accepted leads and stages are nearly as important as the intersecting points between the organizations, right? Like, you can, every marketing leader and sales leader will have a slightly different take on the buyer journey and the stages, and when one crosses from one to the next, and what qualifies as a attributable qualified lead and all this stuff. At the end of the day, I think it's really about measuring and paying attention and managing the intersection where any handoff occurs, and getting really good at that component of it. And the thing is, like, I think the same as sort of, we talked about buyers and sellers and them having like this, in some ways a healthy tension, but in some ways unhealthy tension, right? You have very similar dynamic with sales and marketing, where if the trust isn't there, it doesn't matter how well you build the structure or the process or any of that stuff. It's really about, how do you make sure that the trust exists, so that when something does get handed from one part of the organization to another, that everyone trusts that the other people did their job, that they all have a common goal. So to me, I'm not as focused on how do we. I'll leave that to the marketing and sales ops folks to get real good at that. But I think from a marketing perspective and a sales perspective, the more marketing can help bring receipts, the more, and that's the same reason why I say, tell them how many people you talk to, show them their names, show them their pictures, let them see that these are actual live bodies and not some secondary research or internal, perspectives. That to me is worth documenting more so than just about anything. In marketing organizations, you often see the metric being more around how many assets did we create, right? Like I've been in marketing organizations where the leadership, that's the one thing they talk about every week is we built 6 new one-pagers and we revised 2 of these and here's a new customer story, and you're like drowning in content, right?
Right.
Where really, if you have core assets and you can tell them, we had 5 new prospect conversations this week, and we've adjusted the assets to account for XYZ that we're seeing as a recurring theme across all these people. I think that's where it makes a whole lot of sense to spend your time and effort and justify the work that you're doing. It's funny. I was talking to a CMO of a big bank, and she had said, she's like, I think my marketers are scared to talk to buyers. And I don't know if they're scared. I know that they're not necessarily prepared, because in my practice, we oftentimes hire people who come from a marketing background, and every time I have to take into account that they will need to be trained on all of this. They could be a VP level person. They will come in and they will say, all right, I'm bought into the vision. How do we do it? Right. So there's a lot of work to be done in like building actual muscle memory of how to make a marketing organization data driven in the right way, right? Like, or not the right way. I don't want to overstep, right? Because you've got like demand gen people. They focused a lot on metrics, right? And they're really good at it. And then the other side are the creatives, and they think of themselves as, we're the creative writers of the group, and we don't really need to be metric driven. Or they say, well, we're close to sales, so we need to like be responsible for like some sort of revenue number. Well, do you really want to be responsible for a revenue number if you're making a bunch of guesses with all the content? Like, I wouldn't. The same way as your growth marketers will come to us and say, we're so happy that you guys are doing this for us, because they don't want to be responsible for how ads are performing in market if what they're being told to put in the ads is a bunch of guesses, right? So, so that the same way, like within marketing, there's this same feeling of like, guys, let's stop making a hypothesis and just run with it. It's like developing a drug and never putting it through trials. You're just like, well, we'll see how it goes in market. See if how many people live, right? Like, there's so much we can take from different industries as well. Like consumer, God, they do so much research, and yes, they sell to millions, and they can do quant work that will show a bunch of awesome graphs and charts and sell the story in a way that maybe you can't if you're selling enterprise software. But abandoning the research because you're not going to get to statistically significant numbers, when the research still shows that if you talk to 15 buyers, you're going to have you're going to hit a point where every additional buyer may provide a bit of a bump in your understanding about who they are, but it's not going to continue to create the same returns if you keep going. Not to say you can't, but you don't have to. Like, you don't need massive numbers to actually make this stuff work and plot out exactly how your buyer wants to buy. So I would say, let's steal from these other places where they've made this a science. I'm shocked by how controversial it is to my buyers sometimes when I say, guys, you should be doing this, and they're like, well, that's not how we operate. And I'm like, why? Right? And then I'll say, okay, well, why don't you ask people, why don't you go ask your people who are selling, or excuse me, why don't you go ask your people who built your positioning? Just go ask them how they made the document, right? And it doesn't take long for them to come back to me, and they're like, "We're screwed." Like,
Yes.
we built it in an hour and a half in a conference room based on like what we thought sounded good, and that's
Right.
like universal almost in the response that I get from companies. It's very safe for me with our own prospects to say, go ask them how they built it, and they come back and they're like, this is not sufficient. Like, we spend marketing budget, we spend so much sales budget, and yet the one area where we can take some insurance out and actually like validate it first is not, we're not taking out the insurance. So
That's so true. And and that happens in small companies. It happens in big companies. And I think the bigger they are, the more sophisticated maybe they think they are. But it's still. I mean, I learned a marketing term a long time ago. I mean, it's how did you build it? Well, we have this process called swag. It's a swinging wild ass guess, and that's and there's a lot of that going on. Just you put an MBA term around it. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, we got a swag process,
and
but it's hard.
It is no. I mean no disrespect to our clients that are very large, because they're very good at what they do, but the bar in some cases is even lower, and we look really good because it becomes a situation where we have 10 products and we've got 50 personas we sell to, and it's a matrixed organization, and nobody's figured out how to boil this down in a way that's even containable. So it's not their fault, but they do tend to be, the bigger you get, the more complicated it can be. And unless you have a guide to be like, let's take all this complexity and distill it and simplify it into something that can actually be used to good effect. But yeah, we work with companies, 20,000 plus employees, and they have the same problems. They just have them in bigger numbers and have bigger risks, right? They're taking swings with many more millions of dollars when they take this wild ass guess, right? But no matter where you're playing, right? It's all sort of a function of what resources are at your disposal. If you've raised $10 million and you're risking 5, you're just as much risk as if you have $100 billion and you're risking 50, right? Like it's
right.
You'll very quickly kill a company either way. And the one thing for me, we do have some larger clients, but a lot of our clients are not early stage, but they're 250 plus employees, pre-IPO sort of companies. And I often tell them, like, you're giving away your advantage if you don't do this, right? Like, everyone says startups have the advantage. They can move fast. They can do all these things. That's true. But you're throwing away the advantage if you're going to say, we're going to blindfold ourselves and then hope the, Microsofts of the world will also blindfold themselves, and we'll all just kind of like stumble around in the dark, right? Like, why would you do that? Like, we could move so much faster if we knew what was actually true about our market, and make that a reality. That the whole disruption theory, like, your product's probably by definition, if you're an existing market, it's worse than the alternative, but you're trying to find this seam where you can enter the market and disrupt it. But if you're saying, well, let's tie our hands behind our back and make sure that our understanding or the asymmetry of information is something that is just as bad for us as a company with 40,000 employees where people don't even know who to go to for this information, right? Like, don't give up that advantage. Your chances of actually succeeding are much higher if you continue this work. And like I said, I would be shocked if 90% or more, 95% or more of the successful startups pursue something like a Steve Blank, who is at Stanford, who pitches very similar things that we do for early stage startups. Get outside the building, talk to buyers, don't make decisions based on whether or not they say they would buy, but will they actually commit, right? Don't build until you know that people are going to buy it and not that they think it's a cool idea. The best startups do this stuff. And it's just a tragedy that at a certain point, it stops and people start relying on internal rumor to decide how things changed. And any good, B2B startup is going to take 10, 12, 15 years in most cases to develop into its true form. And if you think that the market's going to look the same as when you started it 10 years later, it's not. There's no nothing lasts 10 years without significant change. So continuing to think, well, it worked for us then. Let's define insanity as just keep doing the same thing, even though it's not working anymore because it worked before. When really, it's let's update our own operating system with what is real now and pursue that.
I think there's so many good things there. I mean, one is trying to just do the same things that they used to work and then they stop. The other is it works so well, we quit doing it. I think that happens all the time as companies grow. And the market definitely does change over time. Complexity kills so many companies. I mean, just that kills growth. And I think that's one of the things that just stops is things do get more complex as it gets bigger, and nobody just calls a timeout and says, okay, we've got to simplify this and get back to basics because we're doing all this other stuff now and we've lost what really works inside all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's funny when you say it works so well, we stopped doing it. That I don't think anyone ever vocalizes it that way, but we do.
No, they don't.
We run into plenty of founders as well that say, I know the buyer. I know this stuff. And you probably did 3-4 years ago. Now you're talking to your best customer who is an early adopter. And if you go ask them and say, how should we talk to our new prospects? They're going to say, tell them you're going to break stuff. Tell them you're going to change the world. Tell them you're going to put a dent in the universe. And it's all about revolution. And then this buyer, mainstream buyer, is like, I want to keep my job.
Right. I want safety and security. I don't want all that.
Right. And so you can take what they tell you because they're your best customer. And oftentimes that is who executives are talking to, whoever today is their revenue engine who keeps the lights on. And they'll say, well, you should build this stuff and you should talk about it this way. And then you run with it, right? And then you're like, well, why is it not working? Well, because your buyer now wants things that don't look anything like your original buyer. That doesn't mean you have to lose your original buyers, although in many cases, early adopters may churn and they're going to go find some other newfangled thing. But you're not going to grow a massively successful company on the back of early adopters. It's such a small, minute group of tinkerers that it's not gonna play out well if you say, I know my buyer, they're early adopters, and all of a sudden we're out of them. And back to the point of like the bowling analogy, right? Like your early adopter is not trusted by your next buyer, right? You have to go through the process so that the people who are your referenceable customers are not that early adopter to your mainstream buyer, or that also is going to kill, if you don't kill it by messaging wrong to them to begin with as a sales rep, putting them in the same room with these guys that want to talk about breaking stuff, they're going to turn tail and run. So a whole lot of reasons why to avoid that trap of thinking your best customer, who is an outlier already by very nature of being best anything. But they also just don't look and feel anything like where you need to go next.
If you could sum up the relationship between sales and marketing in one word, what would that be? And then what could it be in one word?
Strained. I think that's what comes to mind to me.
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants it to work. It's sort of like a marriage on the rocks, right? Like, it's not, you're not at the point, hopefully, unless you have hit that 18-month mark where they start going for each other's jugulars. They want it to work. They know that they have to make it work to have the symbiotic relationship necessary to be successful. But it's strained. There's this constant tension between two organizations that, when they're in sync, man, they can do damage. But if they're not, if that strain exists and people don't trust implicitly what the other side is doing or saying is happening, right? I see this too. Like, CROs will come to marketing and say, this is what's happening. I think that there's a problem with our position, right? And then marketing immediately thinks, well, you're not staying on message and you're blowing it and you guys aren't pitching right and you hired the wrong sales reps because they didn't come from this industry, and all the other reasons why it's the other side's fault. So I think my mission is to make it harmonious, right? Like,
there's the word. I love that.
And by harmonious, I mean, like, you're not singing the same note, right? You're singing two notes. Man, they sound good together. But if you don't, it's if you're pitchy, the things get really weird. But if you can come together sort of in a harmonious way, all of a sudden, like, your win rates start going up, your churn rates of existing customers goes down, you're filling the pipeline because people are talking about you in market, whether you're there or not. Like, it's an awesome thing to see, where all of a sudden inbounds become a real thing. And, like, you're hearing from people who say, I was told to call you guys because you've done great things and your name precedes you. No seller is going to pass up that chance to sell in that environment. I was a seller, like I said, early days.
Yeah.
I sold DSL to businesses when high-speed internet didn't exist, and all you had to do was walk down the street and you got contracts stuffed in your pockets, right? Like, that kind of that's like the ultimate, like, product market fit, right? Where it's like, oh, you go from dial-up or a T1 line to, like, now we have high-speed internet. Like, that's the goal, is to, like, get this relationship in such a way that the information flows freely between the two, and you hit this product market fit that's so elusive, and people oftentimes think they have it when they haven't yet, because they see some early signs. Like, actually getting product market fit is, I think, the only way you can have the true, like, flywheel that people really want to talk about, where it just kind of builds upon itself. But until you're harmonious as a group, saying, like, we all trust each other, we have the buyer as an arbiter that helps us point to the North Star of what truth is, then all of a sudden, actual problems and issues in either group can be open for discussion without contention, and addressed by either side without them saying, well, I don't trust your motives. I don't know if you're here to help me or to hurt me. And as soon as you have that strained relationship, your chances of commercial success drop dramatically.
Well, where can people learn more about you and about Aggregate Insights online?
Yeah, so you can always reach out to us on our website, aggregateinsights.com. We have aggregateinsights.com /podcast for your listeners to go to. We have some good resources. One of the things that we're sharing very freely, because I do feel like what we do is not a secret. It's hard. You have to learn it, but we share a lot of information about how we do it. If you want to give it a shot yourself, we have a comprehensive guide on how to do win-loss analysis up for listeners to pay attention to. Aggregate, sometimes people spell that wrong. So AGGREGATE insights.com. They can always reach out directly to me, B Jensen, JENSEN at aggregateinsights.com.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link all of that in the show notes, and also the win-loss analysis. We can get a link to that as well. So it'd be a great resource for the listeners.
Sure.
Well, Brady, really enjoyed our conversation today. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
As did I. Thanks, Jeff, for having me.
Thanks again, Brady, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when I was talking to Brady, the real question in the back of my head was, I got to have this. How can I get my hands on it? Do you think that too? I signed up for the waiting list a couple of months back over at Aggregate Insights. And, it is finally here. It's launching now at limited release. So get over there, get signed up, get yourself on there. It is unreal. To learn more about Aggregate Insights and Brady, of course, and get your hands on the solution, go to aggregateinsights.com. They're doing some great work over there. And when I first heard about it, like I said, I was just like, I've got to get hold of this. It's not a nice to have. This is a must have. It is great stuff. And as always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And of course, remember, we're on YouTube as well. Full episodes, shorts, training, lots of mess ups from me, funny stuff. But go check that out. And subscribe and share wherever it is that you're listening, and share. Help your friends. It elevates your status as someone in the know, and tells them about something really cool too, and a cool new solution with Aggregate Insights. Everyone who subscribes this week gets a Super Bowl snack helmet. It's not just a hat, it is a party on your head with compartments for chips and dip and maybe a beer or two. So just try not to headbutt anyone in excitement. Well, join us next Tuesday, where our founder is Michael Kemleitner, founder of 2 SaaS companies in the marketing and social media space. We'll be talking about creative ways to scale up without outside capital, and how to gracefully transition from an engaged operator to an empowered leader. Something that I think every founder struggles with. Michael has got this down, and some great lessons in how he made that happen. And the next week on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, we have Kenneth Burke, VP of Marketing for Text Request. He has fueled growth from startups to billion-dollar enterprises, and he'll be here to share his secrets on mastering SaaS marketing and content creation. He's done over 1,000 content pieces. Crazy stuff. Really good. So I will see you next time. And maybe, who knows, maybe see you at the Super Bowl. Want to come over Super Bowl party? Let's do it. As always, enjoy the journey. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.